The morning my mother called me 63 times in a row, I was sitting in a hotel suite on the 41st floor of the Langham, watching Lake Michigan turn silver through Florida-soiling windows, while my husband Callum drank black coffee beside me and said nothing. I didn't answer a single call. I already knew why she was calling. I had known it was coming from the moment I let Callum's assistant post that photo. But to understand what that photo cost my family, and what it gave back to me, you have to know what happened in the firm's private lounge the night before. My name is Imani. I'm 36 years old, and I am a forensic financial analyst and newly named managing director at Whitfield and Crane Capital, one of the most respected private equity and investment advisory firms in the Midwest. My job, in the plainest terms, is to find money that isn't where it's supposed to be. I follow financial trails that other people have tried to bury. I've uncovered embezzlement schemes inside Fortune 500 companies, identified fraudulent loan portfolios that nearly collapsed regional lending institutions, and helped the SEC build cases that ended in 8-figure settlements. I am very good at what I do. I have never, not once in 8 years of doing it, been able to apply those same skills to the disaster that is my own family. The private client lounge at Whitfield and Crane occupies the top floor of a glass tower in Chicago's West Loop. On the evening before my official partnership announcement, the firm's senior leadership hosted a dinner for the 3 incoming managing directors and their guests. The room was dark walnut paneling and ambient light, long tables set with linen and crystal, the kind of quiet elegance that doesn't announce itself. My supervising partner, Managing Director Eloise, stood near the windows giving a toast about the value of people who see what others miss. I stood near the entrance, holding a glass of sparkling water and waiting for my family. They arrived 40 minutes late. My father, Lennox, walked in first, scanning the room with the practiced disinterest of a man who has decided in advance not to be impressed. He was wearing a blazer I recognized from 4 Thanksgivings ago. My mother, Constance, followed in a pantsuit she had texted me 6 times to confirm was appropriate for a work event. Then came my older brother, Quentin, hands in his pockets and already glancing toward the bar, and his wife, Renata, whose first act upon entering was to hold up her phone and record a panoramic video of the room for her Instagram stories. I walked over. I hugged them. They let me. "Is this the whole thing?" Lennox asked, looking around the room. "I thought there'd be more people." "It's an intimate dinner," I said. 40 guests. "I figured with a big promotion there'd be more of a production." He shrugged. "It's nice, very corporate." Constance offered me her cheek to kiss and immediately turned to find the food. "Quentin needs to leave by 9, she said over her shoulder. "He's got an early flight to Vegas." That was when I learned about Las Vegas. Quentin had been planning a launch event for his newest venture, a cryptocurrency consulting platform, his 4th startup in 6 years, at a hotel on the Strip the following evening. He had rented a hospitality suite and invited 200 people. He was calling it an investor preview night, though as far as I knew, he had not secured a single investor. My parents had already booked their flights. Constance had already packed. They had mentioned none of this to me until 40 minutes into the most significant professional dinner of my life. "You're going to Vegas tomorrow?" I asked. "During my ceremony?" "The ceremony's at noon," Quentin said, reaching past me to grab a shrimp from a passing tray. "Our flight's at 1. The ceremony ends at 1:30. He chewed. "Right, so it'd be tight. We'll catch the recap." Constance touched my arm with the specific pressure of a woman who wants to appear comforting while saying something indefensible. "Imani, you're going to be fine up there. You don't need us holding your hand." Quentin's launch is a big moment for this family. I noticed the word family, as though Quentin's 4th failed venture constituted a family moment in a way that my making managing director at 36, after 8 years of 80-hour weeks, did not. "The firm will take photos," Lennox said. He had located the bar and was pouring himself a glass of the Macallan 18 set out for the cocktail hour. He didn't ask, he just poured. "We'll frame one. It'll look great in your office." There was a small gift bag near the entrance, a craft paper bag I had put together for the venue's catering coordinator, a seasonal thank you with a candle, some chocolates, and a gift card for the restaurant she had recommended for the post-ceremony lunch. I had written her name on it in silver marker. Renata picked it up during a lull in the conversation, looked inside, pulled out the gift card, and said brightly, "Oh, this is for you. We almost forgot. Here, this is from all of us." She held it out to me. It was a $25 Starbucks card. The catering coordinator's name was still written on the outside of the bag. I stood there holding it. $25. From a family where my father drove a car whose lease payment exceeded my first apartment's rent. From a mother who had just described Quentin's vanity launch as a milestone for the family. From a brother who was about to fly to Las Vegas to throw a party for a company with no product, no investors, and no revenue. $25. For 8 years of my life. I did not make a scene. I thanked them, slid the card into my jacket pocket, and smiled in a way that did not reach my eyes and did not need to. They left at 8:45. Quentin said he had to pack. Constance reminded me to speak slowly during the ceremony because I had a tendency to rush when I was nervous. Lennox set his empty glass on the tablecloth and said genuinely, as though it were a kindness, "Don't let them pile too much on you, Imani. You already work too hard." They were gone. I stood in the doorway and watched the elevator close behind them. Callum appeared at my shoulder. He had been standing near the window during the entire exchange, still and quiet, listening. He did not tell me it was okay. He did not try to reframe what had happened. He straightened the collar of my blazer with 2 fingers and looked at me the way he does when he is measuring something very carefully. "Let them go to Vegas," he said. His voice was low, but there was a precision underneath it I had learned to recognize. Because after tomorrow, they are going to spend the rest of the year trying to explain themselves. He was not angry. He was certain there is a difference. He took out his phone and typed a message to someone I couldn't see, and I didn't ask. I went back to the dinner. I ate the lamb. I laughed at the right moments. And all night long, the Starbucks card sat in my jacket pocket like a small weight I had chosen to carry just a little longer. The official ceremony the next afternoon was held in Whitfield and Crane's main conference hall. The room had been reconfigured for the occasion, rows of seating facing a raised platform, long windows bringing in pale midday light across the floor. I arrived early, stood near the windows and watched the guests file in the way I always do. Cataloging faces is a professional habit that is impossible to turn off. That was when I began to understand the actual dimensions of the world I was stepping into. I knew Callum was successful. He had been clear about that in the understated way of people who have never needed to announce it. He was a private investor with board seats and a level of access I had always assumed was notable without grasping how notable. I understood he was comfortable. I had not grasped the full picture. The picture became clear when I saw Gregory Thorne take his seat in the 3rd row. Gregory Thorne, Callum's uncle, a man I had met once at dinner where he was introduced simply as Greg, was the chairman of Whitfield and Crane's board of directors. He had been a silent architect of the firm's strategy for 11 years. He was the kind of man whose presence rearranges the gravitational field of a room, and he was here for me. He caught my eye and gave a single nod, not warm, exactly, but entirely respectful. Callum came to stand beside me. "Ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for 8 years," I said. He smiled slow and private just for us. When the firm's senior managing partner called my name, the room was quiet in the specific way of people who have gathered to witness something they consider significant. I walked to the platform. I accepted the formal letter of appointment and held it with both hands, feeling its weight in a way that had nothing to do with paper. After the ceremony, the reception filled with champagne and warm noise. I was mid-conversation when I felt the cascade of notifications that my forensic instincts register before anything else. I excused myself and checked the screen. Callum's communications director, Jada, had posted a single clean photograph to Callum's professional feed and the firm's LinkedIn. It was from the ceremony, me on the platform, letter in hand, Callum and Gregory Thorne visible in the foreground. The caption was 6 words, "New Managing Director. The Thorne family congratulates." 6 words attached to Gregory Thorne's name are not 6 words. Within 20 minutes, 3 industry newsletters had shared it. A regional business journal ran the headline, "Whitfield and Crane elevates 3 to MD," including Gregory Thorne's niece-in-law. I thought of my father, Lennox, somewhere over the Nevada desert watching a movie on the seatback screen with his shoes off. entirely certain that the most important thing happening in our family that afternoon was Quentin's investor preview party. I slid the phone back into my pocket and raised a glass. I did not look at my screen again for 3 hours. That night in the hotel suite, Callum was already awake and quiet when my phone began its frantic rhythm. 63 missed calls from Constance, 11 from Lennox, 4 from Quentin. I set it face down on the nightstand and went to sleep. I answered at 7:15 the next morning. Constance was in a Las Vegas hotel room, and I could tell by the acoustics and the pitch of her voice, half an octave higher than her normal register, that she had been awake for hours. "Imani," she said my name like the opening of a legal document. "Why didn't you tell us?" I said nothing. I waited. "Gregory Thorne," she said. "You married into the Thorne family and you said nothing. Do you understand what Lennox went through this morning?" His bank president called him at 6 a.m., 6 in the morning, because the man saw the article online and wanted to know why Lennox's daughter was married to Gregory Thorne's nephew and why Lennox was in Las Vegas instead of at her promotion ceremony. I walked to the window. The lake was flat and gray and calm. "I didn't hide anything," I said. "Callum's last name is Thorne. His uncle is Gregory. I never concealed that." "You let us think he was just some..." She stopped, restarted. "You didn't tell us who his family was." "You never asked," I said. "You asked once if he had a stable income." I said yes, and you changed the subject to Quentin's crypto platform. "Imani. You handed me a Starbucks card with someone else's name written on the bag and told me you were missing my ceremony for a Vegas party. You didn't ask about my husband because you had already decided he wasn't worth asking about." Long silence. Then her voice shifted. The gear change I had watched my entire life, from offense into wounded performance. "We were only worried about you. You're a successful woman with real assets. When you said you were serious about someone you'd only known for a few months, you thought he was using me," I said flatly. "We thought he might not be who he said he was. And now that you know who he actually is," I said, "you're calling me 63 times in one morning, not because you're worried about me, because Lennox's boss is asking questions." She didn't deny it. "Fix this," she said. "Raw, transactional, every note of performance gone. You have contacts at the firm. You know Gregory. You can explain that it was a scheduling conflict, that we desperately wanted to be there." "I'm not going to lie for you." There was a muffled struggle, then my father's voice. "Lennox didn't say hello. He said my name once, the way he does when issuing an order. Then, you are going to call Gregory Thorne and tell him we had a family emergency, a medical situation, that we had every intention of being there and circumstances prevented it. You will do this today." I took a slow breath. I looked at the lake. "Dad," I said, "I've spent 8 years building a career on accurately documenting what is real and what isn't. I'm not going to commit fraud on your behalf." "This isn't fraud, it's..." "You're asking me to falsify events to protect your professional reputation. And it won't work regardless, because Renata has already posted 47 Instagram stories from the strip. The digital record is complete. There is no medical emergency story that survives contact with her highlight reel. If I issue a statement, the financial press will cross-reference it in 4 minutes, and you'll look infinitely worse." Silence. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to the register I had feared as a child, low and absolute. "If you don't fix this, I will make sure people in this industry know exactly what kind of daughter you are. I will tell them you are vindictive, that you manufactured conflicts to humiliate your own family. I will make sure that promotion costs you more than it gave you." I let every word land. And then Callum's hand closed over mine. He had come to stand beside me at the window and had heard everything. He did not take the phone, he did not escalate. He simply looked at me, steady and unhurried, and said quietly, so only I could hear, "Tell him to check his work email." "Check your work email, Lennox," I said, and I ended the call. The email Callum had sent the previous evening, from his personal address to my father's bank president, copied to the bank's chief compliance officer and the regional office of the OCC, contained 4 attachments. They were documents I had generated over 6 weeks as part of Whitfield and Crane's due diligence on a small bank portfolio the firm was evaluating for acquisition. The documents flagged 11 commercial loans originated at Lennox's bank over the past 3 years. The loans totaled approximately $2.3 million. Everyone had been approved by Lennox personally under a delegated lending authority intended for established small businesses. Every borrower entity was incorporated in Delaware, none had verifiable operating history, and every loan had funded directly into accounts connected on paper to Quinton's various startup ventures. My brother had not built 4 companies, my father had bought them for him, with other people's money. I had flagged the pattern in week 4 of the due diligence. I had documented it carefully, disclosed the conflict of interest to my supervising partners immediately, and removed myself from the final analysis. What I learned from Gregory's notes was that the bank's own internal audit team had already been circling the same transactions for 6 months. The due diligence flag accelerated an investigation that was already underway. By the time Constance called me 63 times, Lennox was on administrative leave. By Thursday, the OCC had opened a formal inquiry. By Monday, his employment was terminated for cause. When the regulatory notice was filed, a matter of public record, it appeared in a regional finance aggregator. Renata, still on the strip and apparently convinced the best response to a growing crisis was more content, went live on Instagram. She sat in the hotel room in an oversized t-shirt and cried for 22 minutes about how I had destroyed their family out of jealousy, how I had never been happy for Quinton, not once in his life. I watched the clip from my office, every second of it. Then I asked our legal communications team to draft a factual press statement regarding the regulatory action. No family references, no emotional language, just the numbers, the entities, and the status of the inquiry. The statement went to the wire services at 4 p.m. By 5, every comment on Renata's Instagram Live was a link to the regulatory filing. The sympathy lasted 3 hours. The mockery lasted considerably longer. Quinton's defamation lawsuit was filed by a local attorney on a Friday. By Wednesday, the attorney had withdrawn, citing conflict. By Thursday, all accounts connected to the Delaware shell companies were frozen pending the OCC investigation. Quinton's personal accounts were largely empty. He had spent the money building infrastructure for the Vegas event that attracted 37 guests, including 12 people he had paid to attend. Renata filed for separation 6 days later. She cited irreconcilable differences regarding financial transparency. My parents flew home from Las Vegas in coach, on a budget carrier, because Lennox's corporate travel account had been suspended the day his credentials were revoked. They arrived at my firm's lobby on a Tuesday morning without an appointment. I took the elevator down alone and met them in the conference room on the ground floor, with the specific stillness of someone who has already processed every version of this conversation. Quinton was there too, in the corner with his phone face down on the table. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He didn't speak for the first 20 minutes. He let Lennox exhaust himself through 3 versions of the same argument, that I had known about the loans and timed the exposure for maximum damage, that I had manufactured findings, that this was orchestrated to remove him for reasons that had nothing to do with fraud. I let him finish each version. I don't argue with people trying to outrun the truth. I just let the truth be the truth and wait. When Lennox finally ran out of versions, Quinton looked up at me. "You could have just called me," he said. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "Instead of all this." I looked at him for a moment. I genuinely looked at him, at the face of the brother who had spent his entire life being shielded from what his choices actually cost other people, who had never once had to sit with the weight of them until now. "I've been calling you your entire life, Quinton," I said. "You never picked up." He didn't answer. He looked back down at the table. I slid the internal audit memo across to Lennox, the bank's own document, the one that predated my due diligence by 6 months, the one with his name in it 4 times. I told him what he already knew, the home equity line he had used to cover the first loans when they started to go bad. The bank knew, the OCC knew. He needed a criminal defense attorney, a good one. "The house," Constance said. Her voice was hollow. "We're going to lose the house." "Yes," I said, "you are." I had known about the home equity default for 2 weeks. My holding company had monitored the proceedings from the moment the loan was flagged. When the bank accelerated and the property went to sale, my company submitted the winning bid before the public auction opened. I drove them there on a Saturday morning. Constance talked the entire way. They could rent somewhere. Maybe Quentin could help once he got back on his feet. Maybe there was still a way. And I let her talk because it cost me nothing and because I already knew what she would see when we turned onto that street. The moving crew was there, professional, quiet, efficient, carrying boxes through the front door and loading them into the truck. Constance made a sound when she saw it, then she turned to me with something wrong in her eyes, hope misplaced and painful. "You bought it," she breathed. "You bought the house to keep it in the family." I took the ownership document from my bag and held it where she could see the title. "I bought it," I said. "It's mine." The hope left her face so completely and so fast, there was almost nothing underneath it. Lennox looked at the document, he looked at the moving crew, he looked at me, and I think in that moment he finally understood, with full clarity, for the first time, that his daughter had never been a problem to manage. She had been a person, and he had spent a very long time choosing not to see her. He didn't say anything. I reached into my jacket pocket. The Starbucks card was in 2 pieces. I had snapped it the night after the ceremony, alone in the hotel bathroom, in the private way of someone who doesn't need an audience for their moments of release. I had kept both halves. I set them on the hood of his car. They were so light they barely made a sound. "Buy yourselves lunch," I said. Callum was waiting in the car at the end of the driveway. He had driven me here and stayed, because he understood that some things a person needs to do with their own hands, and that being present without interfering is its own form of devotion. I got in. He didn't ask how it went. He already knew. He rested his hand on mine for a moment, warm, unhurried, solid, and then we pulled down the cobblestone driveway and through the gate and onto the open road. I didn't look back. The property is being converted. My architects are turning the interior into a satellite office for the firm's Midwest Forensic Division. There will be a sign at the gate with my name on it. I didn't plan that out of spite. I planned it because I needed the space and the location is ideal, and it is a well-built structure that deserves a better purpose than the one it served. But I won't pretend I don't notice the particular satisfaction of it every time I drive past. The real lesson in all of this is not about money or property or the mechanics of my father's regulatory investigation. The real lesson is the one I had to learn slowly and at significant cost. You cannot negotiate your worth with people who have already decided what you're worth. You cannot perform your value for an audience that has chosen not to see it, and you cannot spend your career documenting what is true while accepting a false version of yourself inside your own family. Lennox used money as a lever because he understood I feared losing access to it. Constance used family loyalty because she understood I feared being cast out. Quentin used my competence, knowing I would quietly fix what he broke to keep the family from looking bad. And I let them, because somewhere underneath all my professional certainty, I had never fully believed I was allowed to stop. What changed was not Callum's name or Gregory's board seat, or the regulatory investigation, or the photo that went out on LinkedIn. What changed was a hotel room at 7 in the morning, 63 missed calls on a lit-up screen, and a choice I made to set the phone face down and go back to sleep. Not as punishment, as evidence finally that their emergency was not my obligation. There is a specific kind of quiet that comes from that understanding. It doesn't feel like triumph at first. It feels like the absence of something you carried so long you forgot it was there. That weight is gone now. I notice its absence every single morning. If Imani's story reminded you that your value does not require anyone else's confirmation to be real, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments. What is one thing you finally stopped explaining to people who were never going to understand it anyway?